Welcome to the Amphibian Press podcast. I'm Ceara, and with me today is Ceara Comeau. She's a sci-fi mystery author, and we're going to be talking a little bit about her Amber Oak mysteries. So we want to tell us a little bit about the premise?
Well, it's not Amber Oak Mysteries anymore. That's all changed. I'm actually going into the science fiction fantasy world. What I've been writing lately is something called Memories of Chronosalis. That was a book I published back in 2018, so about a year and a half ago. And that was a story based off of the Amber Oak Mystery series.
Oh, cool.
I didn't like where the series was going. I knew I could do better, so I said, let me scratch it and rewrite it. And that is how Memories of Chronosalis came to be. It still has some of the same characters and a few similar situations in it, but it's taking a science fiction, otherworldly twist to it.
Oh, cool. So how much of the mystery is still there? Because those two genres are so like the pacing at least is so different. Because like sci-fi has that like hard, fast-paced thing, and then there's all the tension and the slow build of a mystery. So was that sort of like a total rewrite, or how did you do that?
Well, it wasn't necessarily, it was a complete rewrite, but I still added elements of the mystery, of the psychological twist. That's one of my favorite things to write about within the science fiction fantasy world, is messing with the reader's mind, making them think it's something when it's really not. It's kind of just something I've always liked to add with the characters and with the adding with and continuing with the mystery, because that's how I began. But that's kind of how I've been able to incorporate what I began with. So, yeah.
Nice. And tell us a little bit about the plot. Give us a little elevator pitch.
Here's my elevator pitch. So, Memories of Chronosalis is about a young 16-year-old girl named Amber Oak, and she is gifted with these wonderful powers, and she's destined to save an entire solar system from absolute destruction by these creatures called the Brothers. She has to save all of humanity, but in order to do so, there's a catch. She has to prevent her family from killing each other because she needs their help. So she's got to have some family drama mixed into it, but their story is all incorporated with the overall mystery stuff.
Nice. I like the drama in all my genres.
Yeah, what's a story about genre, right? Without mystery, right?
So you sort of have like a fun origin story as far as like how you came to be a writer, that I think is a little different from a lot of indie authors. So do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, sure. I began writing when I was around 11 or 12. I was in a situation, I was at a really, really tiny school, and I was being bullied. I had no one to go to. The teachers were also, in a way, bullying me too. So I felt like I didn't have an outlet, and writing somehow became that for me. I actually didn't even know consciously what I was doing. I was just writing ramblings down. It was my only means of escape. And from there, that's where Amber Oak began, because she was, in essence, me. She was my way of releasing that frustration and being somebody that I knew I couldn't be in real life. So she was kind of that hero. So that's kind of everything. It was kind of history from there.
Yeah, I definitely hear you with the school systems being not always on the side of the victim, for sure. I had this very similar elementary school situation. And yeah, writing can be such an escape.
Oh yeah.
Like magic, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is magic in a sense. It's magic with words. It's how I feel like that's, as writers, that's our magic. That's our power. And I mean, that saying goes, pen is mightier than sword, and it's so true, because their writing, fictional writing even, has changed people's lives. And that's what I hope to do in my writing one day.
So, sort of speaking of changing young people's lives, now we've both spoken to the Making Community Connections, or MC Squared School, but you're actually doing a workshop with them. So
right.
Tell us a little bit about like what you're incorporating with that, and what are the biggest challenges and obviously rewards with working with young kids?
Every single class is like a new adventure for me, because the one challenge I've realized is that, I mean, all students, I mean, I have to kind of go back to my high school years and remember what it was like being in their position. And a lot of them, they do have lives outside of school. They have lives outside their writing, and that's the one thing to take into consideration, because me, writing is my whole life. So I'd say that was probably one of the challenges, because it's trying to get them to, you know, stay focused and to pay attention to what it is I'm trying to explain to them. And it's finding ways of making it exciting. That's, I think, is the ultimate challenge. But my favorite thing is I just love going there, because there's definitely a certain group of students that's all they want to do. That's like, they live, eat, sleep, and breathe writing. And it's so much fun to see them, how excited they get. Like, they'll come to me and be like, hey, I have a question about this science fiction or fantasy world. And so what I'll do is I'll walk through, they'll tell me their story, and I remember as much as I can. But what's fun is I'm able to, like, almost role play with them, seeing, like, take part of their characters. And it's like, I don't think a lot of people really do that. And I know for me, role playing's helped a lot with when I'm working with my characters. So I always try to think of what it was like when I began writing, because the one concept was, when I'm walking into this, was I want to be that person for them that wasn't there for me when I started. And that was like that's still the main concept that I'm going with. But what the workshop is about is more like taking, like, bit by bit, the entire writing process, starting with the myths about writing, starting with the smallest, like, let me just give you the whole idea and what writing's all about. And then, like, now we're going to start getting into character development, and we're starting about the stuff that they really want to learn, which is, you know, when it comes to school, you gotta learn kind of everything before you learn what you really want to learn. And that's kind of how it works. But it is fun, and it was really exciting. Last week was my birthday, and they gave me a handmade card that had my cover of Memories of Chronosalis on. They drew it. It was the cutest thing ever, and it was like, they inspired me. They were just like, it's like one of those moments you just don't realize how much you actually are helping somebody until, you know, later on. And that was at that point, I'm like, oh wow, I guess I am making a difference. Because, you know, sometimes, you know how kids are, they're like, they get distracted very easily. So you're wondering, well, what am I doing? Like, am I doing the right thing? And so that was I was like, that just solidified it. Like, yeah, maybe I am doing something. Maybe I really am helping them. And so it is really fun. I do hope that this isn't the last, you know, event I can work with them. I do hope to work with them in the future. But it's really fun. I have had a few other schools reaching out to me to do similar situations. Working with a middle school, we're trying to see if we can get the students are actually writing their own story, and we're going to try to see if we can combine it and put it into an anthology for middle schoolers, so that they can actually have a physical copy of their work. So that's something that we're working on too in a different school. So it's awesome. It's really fun. It's like, it's a very fulfilling feeling. It's like, you know, you're almost reaching that peak. And, you know, I'm looking back a year ago today, it's like, I would never thought I'd be, you know, teaching students the art of writing. It's like thinking back by that.
Yeah, my other half at Amphibian Press, Marissa Frosch, she has been working with her son's school to do something similar. I mean, they're like elementary age. And yeah, she's saying, like, it's so much fun to work with these kids and see all these little stories that they have in their heads, you know, especially because that's, like, there's so much imagination at that age.
Oh, right.
It sort of gets dumbed down, you know, as you go through schools. And yeah, I think she's working with the school to have the proceeds go back to the PTO too. So that's a nice way to, you know, get the teachers a little more excited about it as
well. You go. Teachers gotta be excited too. I gotta get something.
So, I mean, you talked a little bit about your inspiration as, you know, being bullied and sort of wanting to escape. But as far as your characters go, what was your inspiration for them and for the world and the different mysteries that originally you incorporated?
A lot of my inspiration for the original series came from, believe it or not, personal experiences, whether it was a look that somebody gave me or a story that my dad told me from his youth. And it really initially came from, like, that's where I got the plot for the stories. And as I got older, the the plot and the scenes kind of just came from somewhere in the recesses of my head, and eventually the characters became the focal point. Like if I meet somebody, they become like a character in a sense, or if I have a character and I see somebody, I'm inspired by the way they're acting. And really, I always tell, when somebody asks me that, I say people are my inspiration. They're characters in themselves. Like if you go to the mall and you actually just sit down and non-creepily people watch, it's amazing how many characters you'll actually see and you'll actually experience. I think that's actually the coolest thing ever, because everybody has a unique story. I mean, we can go through very similar situations in our lives, but we all have a different reaction to said situations. And that, as I've gotten older, has been my primary driving force that has brought me to some of these crazy storylines. Is the concept of what if this person did this, what if this person experienced that. And that's honestly how I came to be with a lot of these concepts.
Yeah, I love people watching. Like, I mean, especially, so my background's, you know, biology and anthropology, so like people are in there. But yeah, just like sitting down, like, or an airport or a train station,
right.
Just like,
oh, definitely,
the stuff you see, and not even like, from like a drama perspective, like just the humanity.
It's just like sometimes the way somebody walks or the looks that they glance at other people. It's really fascinating. Honestly, airports are one of my favorite places to be just for that reason, because at least with a mall, you get mostly local-ish people, but with an airport, you get anybody from anywhere, and that's really neat.
I think one of the more recent times I was in an airport, someone was coming from Vegas, and I watched her reach into her bag and put her wedding band back on. I'm like, oh, there's a story right there.
There you go. That is a story, man. That's
awesome. So you were recently on a local television program, right? Or in Massachusetts, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like super exciting. Tell me a little bit about that and how that worked out and what you did.
Yeah, well, it still sometimes feels like a dream to me, because it was so like fancy, I guess you would say. It was really like, I went there and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually in a real studio. What am I going to do with my life? Like I was like totally wasn't really sure what to expect, but it was on a segment called Right Now, and it was really fun because my favorite part of that was the woman interviewing me. She had actually read my book, my Memories of Chronosalis, and she was, I believe from what I can remember, she was, when I was interviewed by her, she was the first person to actually interview me based off the book, not about, you know, how I got writing and general. And so it was really cool, and a lot of the thoughts she came up with and the questions, I guess I myself hadn't really thought of before. Like some what she got out of the book, I'm like, wow, I didn't really think about that. Maybe well, it was just really cool, because that was something I really wanted to do as a writer, was instill concepts that people don't normally think about on a regular basis, and not like make it like a teaching lesson per se, but make it in a way that makes people think, because I feel like the best kind of writing is the ones that make people think. And that as a writer, that has always been my primary goal. Like, I want to learn something from this, whether it's something that the character goes through, and that's in a way how you make writing real and realistic, is that you can relate it to the reader. And so it was really fun in that we were just talking about the book, and before the interview even began, she opened the book and she had written all these notes in it. I'm like, wow, you're really into this. Like, I was honestly a little intimidated but I was so excited, because I'm like, yes, somebody is so interested in my work that is like the pinnacle of where I want to be right now. And so it was almost magical, because it felt, this is the direction I want to go. So that was super exciting.
That's awesome. And it's sort of like, I mean, when you're in English class, right? Like in high school, right? You're doing all this analysis where you're like picking apart a book, and you always wonder, like, did the author like actually mean to do this? Especially as you start writing yourself, and you're like, or is it just like a happy coincidence, or the lines and it felt right, but they didn't like consciously put that in, and then you're like, oh, I'm doing this to my book now.
Right. You see, it's funny, because I always hope that maybe one day somebody out there will take my book and be like, I want to use this as a as a book report or something. That's kind of like I have a lot of like mini goals in life, but if I were to, like, a student were to come up to me one day, a random student from a totally different school that I didn't teach at, and they were to say, hey, I'm using this as a book report, I'm like, yes, that would be that would be like goal, man, goal. It'd be so awesome. And I know, like, I often wonder that as I write my books, what am I going to get out of it, and what's the reader going to get out of it? And I don't know, I just think that'd be really cool to just have them stop, pause, and just think about what some of the elements mean. That's why I do add a lot of underlying meaning to my writing, because it's like you can get so much out of a book, but that specific thing that you get out might be something that you need.
Right.
So at least at that time, and so that's kind of how I see that.
I heard, I went to a seminar sort of recently in Philadelphia, and a lot of it was geared towards nonfiction, but what they were talking about when they were talking about marketing was like, why does the reader need your book? And of course, it was all nonfiction, but it's like, this can be totally true for fiction too, like with those, bullied kids, or, someone who's finally seeing themselves portrayed in a book, or a character who looks like them or acts like them or whatever. It's like, well, fiction is just as necessary, if not more, but that's sort of a biased opinion.
Well, no, actually, I remember in college, I did an argumentative, like, speech type thing about what's more important, fiction versus nonfiction, and obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I did a point that, fiction does help people. Fiction stories actually in some ways helps people more than nonfiction, because you put them in a different world and a different mindset, and like even fantasy or whatever it might be, you get them out of their regular day lives and kind of work a different part of their brain that they're accustomed to. And I think that is super important. And I always tell myself whenever I'm writing a book, and kind of to, like, almost like my mantra in a way, like whenever I'm thinking about it, somebody out there needs your book. I remember seeing a quote, so I don't even know who said it or where I found it, but it kind of gave me chills, because maybe somebody out there does need my book. I mean, I know one of my favorite authors is J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter. And, I've done just a little bit of, curious research about her writings, but there have been so many people that were positively affected by her work that just totally changed their lives and gave them that feeling of empowerment. I'm like, yes, that is what I want to do. And so it's like, that was so inspiring to me that, that's proof right there that fictional stories have their own little magic. They have their own thing that they can change the world.
Even just from like a fandom perspective, because that's a whole community now that those people may not have found. And and I think in a lot of ways too, like, while someone is focused on the plot, like the book part of the book, some of that more important stuff can kind of sneak in. and
very subliminal, definitely.
So what's next for you? You mentioned when we were off air a new release that's coming up, and just where are you going?
Well, okay, so I recently, this past week, released the prequel to Memories of Chronosalis. It's called A Scientist's Remorse, and it's written from the perspective of one of the main characters from Memories of Chronosalis. So it's first person point of view. It's not my favorite, but it had to be written because the character said it. And with this prequel, it's a novella, and it's really kind of the background of all the main characters from Memories of Chronosalis. So it's the spoiler book, so you've got to read Memories of Chronosalis first, or you're not going to understand anything in the prequel. But I wrote it because when I was developing the characters for Memories of Chronosalis, I realized I was creating a little story in that of itself, because there was so much to explain about these characters, and I really wrote that prequel for the fans, for the people who were very intrigued by Chronosalis. But that was my most recent thing. Currently, right now, I'm actually working on a trilogy based off of the Arthurian legend, but it also takes place in another solar system. And what I'm trying to do is I'm actually working on the next 6 books all at the same time, because all 6 books are actually loosely connected to Memories of Chronosalis.
Oh, neat.
In that, what it will be is there are standalones, except for the trilogy, obviously, but they're standalones. But for those who have read Memories of Chronosalis and read all of the books onward, they'll be able to see those little Easter eggs that I leave behind that hint back to the Chronosalis galaxy, because all the stories take place in that galaxy. So it's really exciting. I was kind of creating my own universe in a sense, kind of similar to like Marvel or whatever, but I was creating that in mind that I wanted my characters to all meet up at some point. That was my main concept because I'm like, that'd be so cool to do. What if they all met up? What if there's a huge thing that they had to solve, a huge whatever it might be. So I'm kind of writing everything at the same time because I want to make sure that everything makes sense.
Right, has that interconnectedness.
It's happy sense, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing right now. But yeah, I'm trying to boost right now. The prequel is really intended to boost Memories of Chronosalis to keep that concept going, because that is currently still, even though it's been out for about a year, it's still the most important book right now because that's going to launch off the next 6 books or so. So yeah.
That's awesome. So speaking of themes and whatnot that people can get from your books, do you have like a running message or undertone to your work at all?
Oh my goodness. Well,
I stumped you.
Trick. This is a question that wasn't expecting. All of my characters have, I won't say the problems. They're more like they're not perfect. I never create a character that is flawless because in reality, nobody is. Everybody has baggage. Everybody has something. So what I do with my writing is I try to make my characters have their own individual problem that they need to overcome or a flaw that they need to deal with and they're ignoring. And in a way, I'm trying to make it so that if somebody out there theoretically has that flaw or can relate to that character, maybe they can find a way to deal with that problem, whatever it might be, in a way that they might not have thought of before. So really, I kind of just want to show my character, the readers, that you know, it's okay if you have these individual issues. There are ways to resolve them. It's not necessary that you're not the problem itself, basically. It's okay. We're all flawed. So that's kind of the concept that was going with it. Each book has its own individual overall theme, overall concept. With Memories of Chronosalis, I was hinting at a tiny bit of environmentalism, tiny bit about political corruption, and I was also dealing with issues with race and how there's always conflict with that. So I'm dealing with all those 3 concepts, but at the same time, that also transcends into the prequel, although it's heavily more on the environmental issues that we face. So every book has something. Like, every person has something. And oftentimes what I do, if I have a lot of characters that have a lot of messages, I will write that character down in a Word document, and then I'll explain who that is next, so I can keep that straight, so I can keep their character. Because sometimes, I mean, when they sometimes when they learn something each time, and whether the character wants to face it or not, totally up to them. But that's what drives my stories, is to make them relatable.
That's awesome. Yeah, we just my friend and I, we write in the same universe, and we had to sit down and do like this whole timeline thing because we kept like messaging each other and being like, wait, does this happen first? Does that happen first? Or like, is this character alive yet? And
better done that. I know that feeling.
Yeah, so those character Bibles and maps are like so important.
Yeah, they are, as for a writer, those character plot lines, outlines, maps, backstories, they're like almost a writer's religion in a sense, just to keep that at least that one specific book straight. So I get that.
So I mean, that's about our time, but where can people find you online and apparently in person, because you're doing all these exciting things?
Oh, I'm trying. I'm going to be this year going to a lot of Comic-Cons. Keep posted specifically. I try to update my website as much as I can. My manager mostly does that, but I try to keep that updated. So it's just my name, CearaComeau.com. You can also look at my Facebook fan page, which is called Sci-Fi with a Twist. That is primarily where I keep things posted. I'm on Instagram under my name, Ceara Comeau. I'm on Twitter, same thing. I try to keep updated with almost everything and anything that's different that's happened, just because I want to share my journey with people. But those are the primary places you can find me in my social media. But for my book specifically, you can go on the publisher's website, which is called lulu.com. That's another place. Or you can just go to my website, and there's a link to buy my books there. My Memories of Chronosalis just recently got onto Audible. So It's now an audiobook, and I'm so stinking excited for that because it took several months to get that into effect, but it's very exciting, and so that's there. I actually sell the CDs, of the audio CDs at my events, so that's exciting too.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that my website is probably, if you get lost, my website, or just type in my name into Google search, because I'm kind of like at this
The
point.
only one.
Yeah, basically.
I know it's very easy to research you. You're everywhere. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me, and I'll put links to everything for people who want to
Awesome.
find you in the show notes, and yeah, definitely keep us
Thank you for
updated.
having me. It was really fun talking to you. I really appreciate it.
So this has been the Amphibian Press podcast, and I'm Sarah Boris, and with me today was Ceara Comeau. Thank you.